Hey, shalom, shalom, shalom. Alright. First and foremost, call hello, Yahweh. Shimi Awashai, Bahashim, Kakadash. Once again, double honors go out to the apostles, bishops, and elders who rule well. Salutations also go out to the fellow Akim out there on the highways and byways, pushing this truth. Alright. With no guile in their mouth. Alright. Trying to wake up the remaining hopeful elect. This is Naaman with the DC camp. And here we go with another most corrupt. Woodrow Wilson. Oh my goodness, where do you start? To say this POS hated Jake will be a major understatement. So I'm not going to jibber jabber too long. I'm just going to bring out a scripture before that. That would be Matthew 10:26. Fear them not, therefore. For there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, and hid that shall not be known. Alright, all these prophecies are coming to bear. Alright, and all this information is coming out that's exposing these devils, these so-called white people, whose biblical nationality is that of Edom. They are the descendants of Jacob's brother Esau. And it has been this constant war between the descendants of both these brothers. And when you understand that in its totality, then you can go all the way back to Genesis, the 4th chapter. Alright, but let's focus on this. So, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are the Israelites. Alright? And Edomite has nothing to do with that. And yet, they're claiming to be us. And I just put in the group chat earlier today about they revealing the statue in Jerusalem of the Lion of Judah. And it's an actual statue of a lion. This is a whole nother video. I'm not going to touch on that now. I'm just saying, wow, these people, they know enough to put all this shit in front of our people to distract us, as Psalms 83 suggests. Alright, everybody's come together. They're confederate with each other against us. And you have to ask yourself, all these nations, did we ever steal their land? Did we ever enslave them through monetary means? You know, the WEF, the World Bank, all that, you know. Did we ever do these? What? And yet, because I have to put up this, what is the greatest religion? What is the largest religion in the world? And a lot of people will get it wrong. They will say, oh, it's Catholicism, oh, it's Christianity, oh, it's Islam. No. It's white supremacy. See, everybody's fed into this shit. That's this devil's witchcraft. Alright? But in any case, let's go ahead and roll this video. I don't want to take too long. It's already almost 4 minutes. And I'll stop it as, you know, to bring up scriptures and maybe insert some other things just in case I might see something he left out. So let's roll.
This man is a minister's son, a former professor,
that figures,
an ivory tower intellectual thrown into the arena of world politics. He is the President of the United States. Within his lifetime, he will be acclaimed and idolized. But from his deathbed, he will see his dreams, his plans for world peace, crumble into dust. His name is Woodrow Wilson, and this is his biography.
His dreams.
Every world leader has their controversies and are judged by history as to their successes and failures. President Woodrow Wilson is no exception. Progressives today often look at Wilson as the first truly modern reformer and benchmark Democrat. More objective observers look to his record of selective persecution and segregation, and his handling of the United States entering World War I. Regardless of where one may fall in their opinions, Woodrow Wilson was a very complex man. Who was the real Woodrow Wilson? Why is he such a controversial figure? What were his greatest failures? What were his greatest successes? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, a veteran of the United States Army and Marine Corps, former history professor, book author, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History.
The latest weather forecast app for 2023. This app not only has satellite cloud images, can predict
Thomas Woodrow Wilson was born around midnight on December 28th or 29th, 1856, depending upon the sources, in Staunton, Virginia. His mother was from England, and she was the daughter of a minister. His father, Joseph Ruggles Wilson, was a Presbyterian minister, and during the American Civil War, he served as a chaplain in the Confederate Army and used his church as a hospital for wounded soldiers. Growing up, he was known as Tommy Wilson, spending much of his youth in Augusta, Georgia, and Columbia, South Carolina. He was considered a rather slow student due to having dyslexia, and he did not learn to read until he was 10 years old. Wilson later did well in school and graduated from the College of New Jersey, later renamed Princeton University, in 1879, and then attended law school at the University of Virginia. In 1885, Wilson married Ellen Axon, a minister's daughter from Georgia, and they had 3 daughters. Ellen died of kidney disease in 1914 during Woodrow's first term as president. He practiced law in Atlanta, Georgia, and received a PhD in political science from Johns Hopkins University in 1886. In fact, he is the only president to have ever earned a doctorate. He taught at Bryn Mawr College and Wesleyan College before being hired by Princeton in 1890 as a professor of jurisprudence and politics. Wilson published a very revisionist 5-volume textbook series in 1902 titled The History of the American People. In his books, he romanticized the Confederacy during the Civil War and described the Ku Klux Klan as roving knights errant, an invisible empire of the South, bound together in a loose organization to protect the southern country of some of the ugliest hazards of a time.
And see, well, what is that organization? The Daughters of the Confederacy? See, and they went on this campaign. Of course, I always say, yeah, the South lost the war, but they won everything else. And since the turn of the 20th century, the Daughters of the Confederacy, especially in the South, had been very instrumental or very involved in the school curriculum, which attempted to, and in part did succeed, in making people feel sorry for the South, romanticizing it, like he said. Remember the movie Gone with the Wind? All right. So, like I say, this guy hated us, says he grew up in Georgia and South Carolina. He was born in Virginia. All right, so yeah, he was a Southerner. All right, let's continue.
A revolution. From 1902 to 1910, Wilson was president of Princeton, where he developed a reputation for his educational reform policies. However, during his tenure as president of that university, he also prevented the enrollment of black students. It was at this time that he entered politics and became the governor of New Jersey in 1910, ensuring that segregation was maintained. In 1912, the Democrats nominated...
And see, this is what you will get headaches trying to figure out, well, what the fuck did these people do who were who are in captivity under subjection to pieces of shit like you, why do you hate them so? And the only answer to that, for those that, will receive it, is that this is that hatred that it talks about between Jacob's people and the Edomites. And it's the Edomites that had the problem. All right? They want that birthright back at the end of the day. This is spiritual. Some of them can't even tell you why they hate us. And yet, the majority of our people keep believing that they can actually get enough education and work hard enough to succeed in this piece of shit. It's never going to happen, because you're only ever going to be allowed to go so far by them. And what these people, these Edomites, these so-called white people, are expert at, they will, remember I made the statement about they will allow certain of us, you get into these colleges and you have the Boule, you have the talented 10th, all right, and you have all these jakes that are recruited out of these colleges, to be so-called leaders over us, all right. All this shit is very little that goes on, including the music, other forms of media. When it comes to all this, it's this big-ass machine that's designed, as part of the big-ass machine that's designed to keep these people, all right, at bay. We'll feed all this shit to them, but they can never be allowed. And they'll use they'll use some of our own people. I like to call them tools. They're tools of the man, so to speak, as they used to speak. All right? And what does this so-called white man love to do? And this goes back to antiquity. What does he like to do with his tools? There'll come a time where he'll think that, well, this tool has got too big for his britches, so he'll break them. Look at all the entertainers and people as such, politicians, that he, at some point in time, they might have bit the hand that fed them or got out of pocket in some other way, and they end up in trouble with the law or get killed under mysterious circumstances. That's what point I'm trying to make. Alright, so it's like we just gotta get the fuck up out of here. Alright, because we're not only fighting our main enemy, these Edomites, you got the other nations involved in this who also hate us. Alright, and then you got my own people we're fighting against. Alright, because they're eating the breadcrumbs from the master's table. Continuing on.
Wilson for president, selecting the governor of Indiana, Thomas Marshall, as his vice presidential running mate. Revisionist historians have labeled Wilson a progressive Democrat who believed in the power of the federal government to expose corruption, regulate the economy, eliminate unethical business practices, and improve the general condition of society, and much of that is true. But he was also well known as a staunch segregationist and did not want blacks intermingling with whites, nor did he believe that blacks needed an education, as they were basically an agrarian and hard labor workforce. Conservative Republican renominated President William Howard Taft, while the progressive wing of the GOP broke off to form the Progressive or Bull Moose Party and nominated Theodore Roosevelt, who had previously served as president from 1901 to 1909. With the Republicans divided, Wilson, who campaigned on a platform of liberal reform, won 435 electoral votes, compared to 88 for Roosevelt and 8 for Taft. He garnered nearly 42% of the popular vote. Roosevelt came in second place with more than 27% of the popular vote.
I apologize once again. This is Salakia.
Second place with more than 27% of the popular vote. Following the death of his first wife, Wilson married Edith Bowling Galt, a widow whose husband had owned a Washington, D.C. jewelry business, making her the new First Lady. Shortly after becoming president, Wilson resegregated many branches of the federal workforce, excluding blacks from employment. This flies in the face of current revisionist liberals claiming that he pursued an ambitious agenda of progressive reform. One major feat was when he established the Federal Reserve and Federal Trade Commission. The Federal Reserve situation was an effort to manage national banks and local banks whose cash reserves could be depleted, and they could replace the cash reserves by selling stocks and bonds, or...
For you so-called white people, you Edomites that want to get mad at something, why don't you get mad at this? These are the people, Senator, was it Aldrich Ames you had, who got in league with the Warburgs and, you know, the other elites. This piece of crap here, setting up a 16, well, he's going to get into that, but with the central banks letting them in, the 16th and 17th Amendments, this is this motherfucker. Alright? So you want to get mad at this motherfucker.
Borrowing from other sources, such as borrowing from China in recent history, or by calling in existing loans. Since there was no depositor's insurance, if it was believed that a bank was having cash flow problems, it was feared that people might make a run on the banks and remove their money. Over time, the chairman...
Sound familiar? That's what they're afraid of now. For those of you that hadn't heard, and that would include a lot of Jakes because they're busy doing dumb shit out here in the streets. You know, Jacob's trouble is coming. Alright? Jacob's trouble is coming. In fact, it's knocking at the door. It's how so many of our people are unprepared till it's sad. And the big thing being prepared is up here. Alright? Getting yourself right. Don't worry about all that. I know it seems, you know, what I'm about to say is, you know, it might be hard for some of you to believe, but all this material shit, it ain't, man, you're going to have motherfuckers in such desperation. And, you know, a lot of Jake, just goes back to what I said earlier, a lot of Jake are just not prepared because they have not personally been through anything that's about to come. They've been largely protected. Alright, these other people that come over here from these other countries, some of them have, you know, they've been around death. They're not going to be that shook up. But these so-called tough guys, especially here in the hoods, and these women, they through. Let's continue.
The Reserve, known as the Fed, has become one of the most powerful forces in American government, able to raise and lower interest rates to adjust for economic changes such as inflation and recession. But they do not mention the fact that he was a strong supporter of the Ku Klux Klan, which assisted in his getting many Southern Democrat conservative votes in both of his elections. He also appointed many Southern Democrats to cabinet positions. In fact, Wilson was so enamored with the 1915 D.W. Griffith silent film, Birth of a Nation, that heralded the KKK as modern knights salvaging the honor of the Old South, as well as preserving the virtue of white women, that he held a private showing in the White House for friends, family, and cabinet members. African Americans in the film were played mostly by white actors in blackface, and they were portrayed as brutes. After the private screening in the White House with cabinet members and their families, Wilson is reported to have said, "It is like writing history with lightning, and my only regret is that it is all so terribly true." Later, he reportedly called the film an unfortunate production and hoped that the film would not be shown in black communities. In 1913, Wilson managed to pass the 16th Amendment, which created the Internal Revenue Service. The Underwood-Simmons Act, which reduced tariffs, which was looked upon as a violation of the 10th Amendment, where states' rights mandated that the individual states would levy taxes upon their citizens and establish tariffs and then submit those collected revenues to the U.S. Department of the Treasury. Wilson also had the 17th Amendment passed, which altered the way senators from states were appointed to Washington, D.C. No longer were senators appointed by state legislatures. They were now elected by the voters directly. The following year, 1914, Europe was at war, a conflict that soon engulfed most of the nations in the world, divided into two camps. The Allies, to include France, Great Britain, and its empire, to include the Commonwealth nations of Australia, New Zealand, Canada, South Africa, Imperial Russia, Italy, Romania, and Japan. Against the Central Powers, representing the empires of Austria-Hungary, Germany, and the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. It is also claimed that Wilson tried to keep the United States neutral during World War I until he called upon Congress to declare war on Germany in 1917. This is a fallacy, and here's why.
Hey guys, Toby Mathis here, and question I get all the time is, how do I make my personal assets?
Historians friendly to Wilson cite the events that propelled his opinion to enter into World War I, such as the sinking of the Lusitania on May 7, 1915. And 761 people survived out of the 1,266 passengers and 696 crew on board, and 128 of the casualties were American citizens. If this were in fact the case, then why would Wilson wait 2 years to ask Congress for a declaration of war? Another event that is touted as his justification to enter the war was the notorious Zimmerman telegram. To quote Encyclopedia Britannica, the telegram was sent January 16, 1917, by German Foreign Secretary Arthur Zimmerman to the German minister in Mexico. The note revealed a plan to renew unrestricted submarine warfare and to form an alliance with Mexico and Japan if the United States declared war on Germany. The message was intercepted by the British and passed on to the United States. Its publication caused outrage and contributed to the U.S. entry into World War I. Even Wilson and his closest confidants did not take the telegram seriously. For one reason, it was believed by a few people that the telegram was a British invention to lure the United States into the war due to the incredible cost in Allied lives and the stagnant condition on the Western Front, which may be true. But no one in the U.S. government saw Mexico.
But they're leaving out the influence of Amalek. Now, there was another incident that happened that, like I said, he didn't mention, and I said at the forefront I would jump in when this part came up. So we're going to look at, they always like to say, well, 9/11, or even December 7th, 1941 was the first act of terrorism, on U.S. soil. Okay. Let's just see. Now, for those of you that are from New York, in that area there, New Jersey, let's see. This was named after a slave. Hold on. Whoops. Alright, let's see. Okay. Here it is. On July 30th, 1916, explosions rocked the New York City region, obliterating Black Tom Island, the largest munitions depot in the United States, located in New York Harbor and connected by rail bed to Jersey City, New Jersey. German saboteurs ignited a fire at the munitions loading facility in Jersey City across Manhattan. The ensuing explosions destroyed the waterfront facility and largely obliterated the island, killing at least 4 people and causing over $40 million in property damage. You adjust that for inflation today. The incident was the first state-sponsored terrorist attack in U.S. history. It was the genesis of the U.S. Coast Guard's port security program. The explosions also damaged the Statue of Liberty. Germany had to pay the United States for that. And they didn't finish paying until the Carter administration. All right, that's when they stopped the Black Tom 1916 bombing. Here is pictures. This is another reason or another cause for the war effort that they did not mention. It was still dark in Manhattan on Sunday, blah, blah, blah. We already read that. 2 million tons of war materials packed into train cars had blown up in the Black Tom Railroad Yard on what is now a part of Liberty State Park. Thousands of windows shattered in lower Manhattan and Jersey City. Shrapnel pockmarked the Statue of Liberty. 3 men and a baby were killed by the explosive energy that erupted from this act of sabotage. The culprits? German agents who were determined to prevent American munitions shippers from supplying its English enemy during the First World War. Never mind that the U.S. was officially neutral in the conflict at this point. So this is what helped tipped. All right. For the U.S. responding was difficult, with few national security laws and no real intelligence community to thwart German agents. America was vulnerable. The Secret Service, by presidential order, was able to investigate some German attacks and intrigues. The Bureau of Investigation, the FBI's predecessor, likewise did what it could, but it was held back by its small size, 260 employees and a handful of officers, and lack of jurisdiction. All right, so, and here's the thing. All because, I'm trying to remember, because I don't see it mentioned here, there was the matter of, what was it? It was, I can't remember how it's worded now. I'm just going, some kind of fee that was paid, something like $25 in, and when you adjust it for inflation today, it would come out to be around $550, something like that. Something about security, I forget. I just threw that out there. Maybe someone else, because it doesn't say it here. And for time's sake, you know, I just thought I'd throw that in there just to let you know it was a little bit more to it. All right, continuing on.
But no one in the U.S. government saw Mexico as a threat to the United States, despite the previous raids by the Mexican bandit Pancho Villa. It was well known that the U.S. Army was vastly superior in numbers and quality, more than adequate to stop a Mexican invasion should it occur.
Pancho Villa.
The other factor was Germany's decision to publicly announce unrestricted submarine warfare in order to prevent war material and supplies from reaching England.
That was under General Pershing.
Owned civilian luxury liner was also proven to have been carrying war material to Britain in violation of the Neutrality Act and international law, according to the Hague Convention of 1907. So why did we enter World War I? Wilson had campaigned on an isolationist policy regarding the World War as he ran for a second term, which was well received nationwide.
Remember what I said about his handlers?
Behind closed doors, the wealthy businessmen who had him elected and then funded his re-election wanted to cash in on that support. Wilson ran for his second term on a public program of maintaining segregation, isolationism regarding not getting involved in the war in Europe, and he had the financial support of the greatest industrialists of his day, such as oil baron John Davison Rockefeller Sr., steel magnate Andrew Carnegie, global investment banker John Pierpont Morgan Sr., automobile manufacturer and anti-Semite Henry Ford, automobile manufacturer Williams C. Durant, New York Tammany Hall boss Charles Murphy, mining millionaire Daniel Guggenheim, railroad fortune heir Reginald Claypool Vanderbilt, and rubber manufacturer Harvey Samuel Firestone Sr. But why would the richest men in the United States, if not the world, support a president who would not publicly support their interests overseas? These wealthy men had invested much of their wealth in Europe business and ventures and banks. All of these men had much of their fortunes tied up in European, Asian, and African business.
See, for all you people that don't get it yet, these people he mentioned, and there are those that are above them, all right, these elite banking families, these are the ones that really run the world, let alone America. All right, not your fucking politicians. All right, because you still got too many people that believe this bullshit. Vote for this person, vote for that person. It's a fucking sick-ass game to keep you distracted.
In fact, Firestone, Durant, and Ford were desperate for their business's survival due to the Belgian Congo. The world's largest supplier of rubber was in danger of being taken over by Germany as...
Never mind the 10 million King Leopold II of Belgium murdered. We're just concerned with our business. See, these devils have a lot to pay for, and they will pay. Oh, don't you worry about that. That's guaranteed. All right? And that, too, is another reason for them to push, all right, for this so-called New World Order to go into effect. Because they know, again, they've lost the information war. All right, none of these things that were suppressed. I mean, there's so much stuff coming out now. So they have to buckle down. They have to come up with this digital currency and this new form of slavery to where if you get out of pocket, we don't like what you said. Hit a button, you cut off. That's what this is going to. This is what this is, after chattel slavery, our people, all this piece of shit has been doing, all right, is finding more ways to perfect, all right, his wickedness. And he's about at that point right now that he can taste it. I'm going to get total control over these motherfuckers. I want everything. I want their soul. Because the only real threat to these Edomites is Israelites. Real Israelites. Continuing on.
War was raging on that continent.
Building a pathway with Quikrete Walkmaker. Building a new concrete walkway can seem like a challenging...
War was raging on that continent. It was quite clear to them that if Germany won the war, most of them would risk going bankrupt. Only an American intervention to secure final victory would save their fortunes. The wealth of his friends meant more to Wilson than American lives. The answer was simple. Wilson lied in his bid for a second term. He had every intention of getting involved in the war due to the pressure being applied by the men who got him elected twice.
Yep.
Wilson just needed a good reason to break his public promise. Again, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, Wilson was reluctant to break diplomatic relations with Germany, but, yielding to public clamor and senatorial advice, he severed those ties on February 3, 1917. While announcing the break in a speech to Congress, he voiced the fervent hope that the Germans would not, by sinking American ships, compel the United States to adopt belligerent measures. Wilson knew quite well that American ships were not to enter the declared war zone around the British Isles and coastal France. Germany had made it quite clear that all ships would be in danger if they did so. In fact, Germany specifically stated that American ships should avoid the war zone as to not create a diplomatic situation. By making that public statement even before the Lusitania sailed for Britain, Germany was in total compliance with international and maritime law. They had set out the conditions and locations allowing neutral nations to avoid direct contact. Wilson then decided to pay his political benefactors back and go to war. But soon afterward, Wilson had another major issue to deal with, again citing the Miller Center. The war was also triggered by a massive movement called the Great Migration of 500,000 African Americans out of the rural South to northern and Midwest.
And also during this time you had the Marcus Garvey movement. You had during these years, which would come, the Red Summer of 1919. You had this large influx of immigrants, coming through Ellis Island. And what they're not telling you is, during this time period also, that these Edomites, American Edomites, were in conflict with them, because a lot of these immigrants coming over from Europe, they were not satisfied with America, and they started to complain, but they never tell you that. There were instances of some of these Europeans being lynched by American mobs. That's something else they don't tell you about. All right. So this is all like, this place is one big, it exists through propaganda. The schools, propaganda. All right. Indoctrination. And that's what the funny thing is, that's what they're accusing CRT of doing, indoctrinating children, and they've been doing it all along. These fucking hypocrites, man. The truth is not man. You see, that's why the scripture says no mercy for these motherfuckers, man. You just cannot win. That's James 2:13. Because he showed no mercy. Alright? And yet, you have a lot of our people that are so far gone, they will really willingly stay underneath a piece of shit like this. Wow.
Cities. For example, the black population in Cleveland, Ohio soared by more than 300%. Detroit's grew by 600%. Chicago's by 150%. And it was not.
And you hear things like this, and it's like these devils have to ask why. Why would they move up from? I mean, it's a stretch to call these motherfuckers human beings, period. But hey, Job 30 goes into that too. Not only are they fools, they're base. All right, they're just a base people. They even had a term or a word to describe a slave that ran away, and they were like confounded by it. I believe the term was drapetomania. Let's see. Let me look that up real quick. Let's see. Drapetomania. Let's see. Oh, how did I get? I always do that. Hold on. Oh, shit. Start over. Here it is. And it says, Samuel A. Cartwright, drapetomania. Drapetomania was a supposed mental illness that, in 1851, American physician Samuel A. Cartwright hypothesized as the cause of enslaved Africans fleeing. They called us Africans. We never were Africans. We're not Hamitic. Fleeing captivity. This hypothesis centered around the belief that slavery was such an improvement upon the lives of slaves that only those suffering from some form of mental illness would wish to escape. The audacity of these motherfuckers. I can't wait for these motherfuckers to continue on.
Chicago's by 150%. And it was not only the opportunity for war industry jobs that attracted Southern blacks to northern cities. Many young black males left, enraged at the brutality of Southern racism, especially the lynchings that regularly occurred. Political disenfranchisement, debt peonage, prison chain gangs, and the boll weevil, insects that destroy cotton plants, left Southern blacks with little hope for a decent life after 1916. Under Wilson, Jim Crow policies were implemented, instituting segregated toilets, cafeterias, public transportation, schools, hospitals, and other whites-only buildings. Perhaps the most telling account regarding Wilson's racist attitude came from his own lips. Quoting Wilson, "Segregation is not a humiliation but a benefit, and ought to be so regarded by you gentlemen," he said during a meeting with civil rights leader William Monroe Trotter in November 1914. He then threw Trotter out of the White House. But Wilson did have a few accomplishments, which included child labor laws, an 8-hour day for railroad workers, and government loans to farmers.
Let's just move on.
Additionally, Wilson nominated the first Jewish person to the U.S. Supreme Court, Louis Brandeis, who was confirmed by the Senate in 1916.
Was not able to chew. That's just how loose they were.
After the war, he helped to negotiate a peace treaty that included a plan for the League of Nations. Although the U.S. Senate rejected U.S. membership in the League, Wilson received the Nobel Prize for his peacemaking efforts. Wilson, to his credit, saw the Treaty of Versailles as a very bad decision by the victorious European allies, hence his creating his 14 points. He understood that making Germany sign the War Guilt Clause for starting the war, which was itself a lie, as the war started between Austria-Hungary and Russia over the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophia by Serbian nationalist Gavrilo Princip. The Senate voted on the Treaty of Versailles first in November 1919 and again in March 1920. Both times it failed to gain the 2/3 vote required for ratification. The United States never joined. Wilson also had major problems with labor unions. Again quoting the Miller Center, "The war years witnessed dramatic changes in the American workplace as the nation achieved nearly full employment. Thousands of workers joined unions, bolstered by Wilson's support for collective bargaining. At the end of the war in 1919, 3,300 strikes involving 4 million workers rocked the nation. Racial tensions were growing as many northern whites resented the Negro invasion. They claimed that poor blacks from the South were taking away their jobs for lower wages, which still far exceeded what they earned down south. Wilson, to his credit, denounced lynching, but he did nothing to protect blacks with enforcing existing federal laws or introducing new ones. He oversaw the introduction and enforcement of segregation into the federal civil service, and the result was a deep decline in the number of federal jobs held by African Americans. At the end of his second term, in 1920, enough states ratified the 19th Amendment to give women the right to vote, and thus enable millions of new women voters to cast ballots in the presidential election. The majority voted for Republican Warren Harding. Wilson, although originally opposed to female suffrage, accepted a plank in the 1916 Democratic platform endorsing it and became a strong supporter by 1918. He reluctantly supported the 18th Amendment, which prohibited the manufacture and consumption of alcohol, but he vetoed on technical grounds the Volstead Act passed by Congress to enforce it. Congress later overrode his veto. On the night of September 25, 1919, on a train bound for Wichita, Kansas, Wilson collapsed from mental and physical stress, and the rest of his tour was canceled. On October 2, 1919, he suffered a stroke that left him partially paralyzed. Wilson's condition was kept largely hidden from the public, and his wife worked behind the scenes to fulfill a number of his administrative duties. After leaving office in March 1921, Woodrow Wilson resided in Washington, D.C. He and a partner established a law firm, but poor health prevented the president from ever doing any serious work. Wilson died at his home on February 3, 1924, at age 67. He was buried in the Washington National Cathedral, the only president to be interred in the nation's capital. Thank you for watching Forgotten History. Please click like, subscribe, and share.
So there you go, damn devil. Yeah. So see, that's another thing Jake doesn't understand. None of these elected officials are going to actually do anything that's going to be beneficial for us as a people. Alright? They never will. You got to understand what we were brought over here for. And we do that in so many ways. But our people are so stuck on chattel slavery and being whipped. Again, which you are, but in different ways. You make money for these motherfuckers on different levels. Alright? You're not looking at, he evolved his strategy. Alright? For instance, so accustomed to free labor, after chattel slavery ended, 1865, what happened? How was he going to continue to get free or very cheap labor? I know. The prison industrial complex. See? When you start thinking like that, then you'll see nothing really has changed. All those amendments that were specifically for us, 13th, 14th, 15th, alright. And then after that, a lot of that wasn't worth the paper it was written on, because, well, in order for that to work, you got to be able to enforce it, right? Alright? And they never were. Same thing with when you go up to the 50s with Brown v. Board of Education. There was at least one, was it a Supreme Court justice? I can't remember. Somebody high up made the comment about, well, I like to see them enforce it. Yeah, it's, you won the decision, everything, but who's going to enforce it? Aha. So for those of you that put faith in this piece of shit system, alright, you're in for a rude awakening, because, hey, the elites are tired of America. They pulling the plug on this, alright? Hey, that's as far as I can go on this. I hope whoever views this is edified as usual. Again, just a trip down memory lane for those of you that jakes that still, for some reason, see some future in this piece of shit called America. Alright? This is just one of many that was never intent on doing anything for us, just like the most recent one that was elected. This trailer park trash piece of shit. Yeah, that's where he grew up before his family moved to Delaware. But see, that goes to show you a lot of our people, you're voting with your emotions, alright? The worst thing we as a people, knowing our circumstances are unique from anybody else that comes over here, the worst thing we could have ever done is chose a specific party. In this instance, Democrat. After the history of the Democrats and our people, you should have been, at least if you were even involved in that shit, which I am not, make these motherfuckers work for you. As it stands and has stood for so very long, you don't get anything. You don't get anything. You just give your shit out, your vote for free. And you got the nerve to question, why isn't anything ever done for us? So sad. So fucking sad, man. But in any case, that's it for this video. I hope, again, whoever views this is edified. And remember, continue to pray for your fellow Akim out there on the highways and byways, the apostles, bishops, and elders. Hey, this shit can kick off at any time. Or continue to be circumspect, especially now. You saw what happened down in Florida. Those people, those 3 jakes that got killed, that's the judgment of the Most High. We understand that. But for someone just walking in a store with a, man, It's like everybody's like, too late then. Hey, so with that, till next video, shalom.